Hello again, Stoveminders. It's been a trying week for baseball with this whole cheating scandal and the fallout and everyone getting their word in on it, and that's great. That's great. It's important. I have a few thoughts on that myself, but that's not the point of this program. This is Stoveminders, the Stoveminders Cubscast, where we're talking stove. We're talking deals, wheels, trades, contracts, the real bread and butter of baseball. And while the stove has definitely cooled down, as is expected at this point of the winter, there's still some big names that have yet to be signed. And one of those names finally signed on the dotted line this past week. I'm talking about Josh Donaldson. 4 years, $92 million, plus an option, going to Minnesota. Wow. Signing Donaldson is a huge deal for the Twins, not just in terms of their short-term prospects, but for the organization as a whole. First of all, this is the largest free agent signing the Twins have ever pulled off, and it's the second largest contract they've ever given anybody, behind only franchise face Joe Mauer and his $184 million deal. I've said before that the Twins have kind of this small market mentality where they don't really go out and make these sort of big signings, even when the team is looking really good on paper, which was the situation. And there they went and acquired A, the best player left available, and B, I'd say the second best hitter, the second best position player who entered this free agent market behind only Anthony Rendon. Yeah, an enormous snag for the Twins. They were not the only ones in on Donaldson. There was sort of that final three teams, them, the Braves, and the Nationals. And that's some stiff competition because the Washington Nationals are coming off a World Series title, though in terms of the financial commitments they've made, they were kind of strapped for cash, and it was like, are they gonna have the money to accommodate Donaldson? But then the Atlanta Braves, first of all, Donaldson played for them last season, so you have the familiarity. And that's another exciting, up-and-coming team that could still really benefit from adding someone like Donaldson. Matter of fact, reports came out that the Twins were not confident that they would land the Rain Man, yet they did. So who is Josh Donaldson? Well, you probably know who he is, but Donaldson was considered by many who were making their all-decade team lists to be the best third baseman of this past decade. In his 9-year career, he has 3 All-Star nominations, 2 Silver Sluggers. Thrice he's finished in the top 5 in MVP voting, including winning the AL MVP in 2015. Now, Donaldson is 33 years old, and this contract will carry him into his age 37 season. And other than just raw age, there is a little bit of concern that has to come in regards to health. Because starting at the end of 2017, Donaldson was getting hurt. 2018 was pretty bad for him. He played in just 52 games and put up some of the worst stats since his sophomore year. But he came back in a big way in 2019 with the Braves. First of all, he appeared in 155 games, so he's good as new. He slashed .259, .379, .521, had 70 extra base hits, including 37 home runs, and 100 walks. And that's pretty reassuring considering what we know of Donaldson up to this point. Excluding his injury-shortened 2018 season, let's just pretend that never happened for these next 2 little tidbits, but Donaldson has 70-plus walks in 6 straight years and 29 or more home runs in 5 straight years. In his whole 9-year career, Donaldson has slashed .273, .369, .509 with a .136 OPS plus. A great all-around hitter. He's got power, he's got decent contact, and he's a heck of an on-base guy. He can see the ball well, walk machine, you gotta love it. And it doesn't end there, because the bringer of rain is also an excellent fielder. Again, 9 seasons, mostly at third base, where he has 68 career defensive runs saved, including 15 last year. Kind of a strange thing he's never won a gold glove, but I guess third base is a competitive position for those honors. I was reading the old trade rumors, and they brought this advanced stat out called outs above average, which sounds really good. And Donaldson has 8 outs above average, which is 17th among all infielders. And that's an enormous improvement to the infield defense in Minnesota, whose infielders are good at hitting. Talking Miguel Sano, Jorge Polanco, Luis Arias. None of these guys have positive defensive metrics. So bringing in someone like Donaldson, it's only one of 4 positions in the infield, I know. But just to have one guy who has a really good glove in that infield is nice. Maybe he can teach these guys a few things. And as far as what this means offensively, I mean, hey, the Twins led the majors in home runs last season. Multiple guys hitting over 30 home runs. Bringing in just like another really good hitter like Donaldson is incredible. He now joins a lineup that includes those infielders I mentioned, Arias, Polanco, who hit really well last season, Sano's quite a slugger, but you also have Nelson Cruz, who's still hitting home runs like it's nobody's business, Max Kepler, Eddie Rosario, and one of the best hitting catchers in the league, Mitch Garver. That's going to be a really scary Twins lineup, and Donaldson adds a patient, experienced, and still powerful dimension to that lineup. Again, huge deal. You got a veteran who's never won a ring. He's hungry. I love the guy's personality personally. I think the Twins will like him too. What does this mean financially, though? Because Donaldson is coming in on a 4-year commitment where he's going to be earning an average of $23 million a year. Well, the Twins might not have the deepest pockets in the majors, and currently their team payroll is going to be sitting at about $140 million, which is a bit around, maybe above league average. But it will drop by $55 million in 2021 when a bunch of contracts come off the books. So, all in all, great news for the Twins. And they weren't done there yet, because this past week and going into the week prior is when teams were able to finally settle some arbitration issues with players on their roster. And while we saw all sorts of salary settlements for 2020, I'm not going to go through them except for the Cubs in a second. But a couple clubs also dished out extensions to arbitration-eligible players just so they wouldn't have to deal with the arbitration process for the next few years. One of those was the Twins, and that was Miguel Sano. He's staying around for 3 more years at $30 million plus an option. This kind of ties back to the Donaldson deal because Donaldson's a third baseman, which has also been Sano's position for the most part, but now he's going to be over at first base, and that's probably the right move, because Sano, in his 5-year career, has minus 19 defensive runs saved at third base. And at first base, where he has 26 starts under his belt, he has minus 2 defensive runs saved. So not good, but not awful. That sounds like a good fit for Sano, because he is a big fella. 6'4", 272 pounds. Man's built like a lineman, Jesus Christ. He's kind of a classic slugger, powerful, really high strikeout numbers, and he's had a wild career to date. Had a pretty good rookie season, finished 3rd in AL Rookie of the Year voting, followed that up with a sophomore slump of a campaign, and then in 2017, his 3rd year, he was an All-Star, put up some of his best numbers to date. 2018 took a huge step back, batted below 200, and then in 2019 he kind of brought back to average. Last season, Sano appeared in 105 games, which is not a lot, and you know what? The guy has not been very durable. He's never played more than 120 games in a season, but hey, he appeared in over 100 last year, /247, which is just about as average, 346 on base and a 576 slugging. Again, 5 years career, 836 OPS, 122 OPS plus. He had 34 home runs last year, and he struck out 159 times. That's what you're going to get from Mr. Sano. So, clearly the Twins see some value in there to give him this extension and to be paying him $10 million a year. He is just 26 years old, so you can theorize that maybe he'll kind of get at least his discipline together. Maybe he'll lose weight. Maybe he'll get a little healthier. Maybe this is all wishful thinking, but clearly for the Twins, They like what they see in Sano, and they're going to keep him around. And the other extension I wanted to highlight was what the Arizona Diamondbacks gave to outfielder David Peralta, 3 years and $22 million. Peralta has, in my opinion, been very underrated as a player. In his 6-year career, all with Arizona, he has been very consistent. A career .290 hitter with a .346 on base and a .478 slugging, a .115 OPS plus, and he's maintained those sort of numbers through basically his whole career. This past season was limited by injury. He hurt his shoulder. Peralta appeared in just 99 games, still managed to hit .275 with about average career-wise marks for on-base and slugging, and despite that, he managed to get a Gold Glove, adding to his cupboard that already includes a Silver Slugger. Yes, Peralta is a pretty good outfielder. He's played about 2/3 of his career innings in left field, though he can play across the outfield. And he owns 26 defensive runs saved in those 6 years, including 10 last year, which was a career high. So pretty good glove. And with all that considered, Peralta, a 32-year-old left-handed hitter, is looking pretty affordable at just over $7 million a year for the next 3 years. Excellent move for the D-backs. The Sano extension, I think, carries a good amount of risk for the Twins just because he's been so wildly inconsistent with everything from his performance to his health, and there's obviously some glaring holes in his game, but Peralta is a very well-rounded player, and to get him for that sort of contract, great move for a Diamondbacks team that's trying to stay some sort of competitive in the near future. Well, I mentioned a lot of teams were settling in arbitration, and one of those teams was, of course, the Chicago Cubs. So let's talk about Cubscast. What's going on? Well, last week's episode I mentioned the settlements with Bryant and Almora, but some more went down this past week. Javier Baez is getting paid $10 million a year next season. Wilson Contreras will earn $4.5 million. Kyle Schwarber is getting just over $7 million, which, to be noted, is $1 million less than his MLB Trade Rumors projection. And left-hander reliever Kyle Ryan is going to get paid $975,000 next season. Hey, it happened. I have to mention it. And you know what? Ryan's one of the better arms that we have left in our bullpen. So, yeah, give him his money. I've been vocal about the fact that the Cubs need to add some arms this offseason. They've been very, very quiet in general, and most of their signings to this point have been a bunch of minor leaguers who play in the field. And I've been like, guys, we're losing all these veteran relievers. Kinsler, Strop, Cishek, who's now officially a White Sox. We need arms. And maybe Theo Epstein listens to the Stoveminders. I doubt that. But I think the Cubs were just being logical here. And they finally went out and signed some relievers, even if it is to minor league deals. And even if these guys aren't exactly tantalizing, there are some new arms that we might be seeing in a Cubs uniform coming out of the pen next season. So who the hell are these guys? Perhaps the most notable is left-hander Tyler Olson, who has 5 seasons and 94 innings of big league experience under his belt. In his career, he has a .383 ERA to go with a .401 FIP, a strikeout to walk through 9 ratio of 9 to 4.4. Does give up quite a bit of hits, but otherwise, not bad at all. Definitely a nice plug to the back end of the bullpen. Olson spent the last 3 seasons with the Indians. It's a great pitching that organization has, so hopefully he's learned a few things. Didn't have his best 2019, but hey, overall track record-wise, just a filler for the bullpen. Definitely not a bad move, and on a minor league deal. So he's not going to be eating too much into the payroll. One thing about Olson is he is a left-handed specialist, but hey, better than Brian Dunsing, right? Cubs also nabbed right-hander Jason Adam. I don't like guys with 2 first names. Sorry, Jason. But anyway, Jason Adam. He has thrown 54 innings over the last 2 seasons with the Royals and the Blue Jays last year. All in all, Adam 4.83 ERA, career 5.27 FIP. Yeah, not super stoked on this dude. We'll probably see him split time between Chicago and Iowa next year, but as I've said, we just need to add guys regardless. So good to see them do this. And another one went down just today. Casey Sadler, who was actually acquired via trade from the Dodgers in exchange for minor league outfielder Clayton Daniel. Sadler, a right-hander, has pitched in parts of 4 seasons with 66 innings under his belt, 355 era, 421 FIPI, 1.333 whip. More like a ground ball pitcher. Again, filler, but it's what we needed. And the Cubs didn't end there. No, Theo Epstein went out and he swung a trade. Traded away Tony Kemp to the Athletics in exchange for a somewhat intriguing infield aspect by the name of Alfonso Rivas. Who is this guy? Alfonso Rivas, a 23-year-old lefty who's pitched as high as AAA, which he did last year. He is primarily a first baseman with some corner outfield experience. His AAA experience is very limited. He played there last season along with High A. All in all, 2019, 122 games. He slashed 292, 387, 423. Rivas is not a top 30 prospect in either organization, but he is a good contact hitter, as his numbers indicate, with a very good walk-to-strikeout ratio. And to add to that, he played in the Fall League this past year and did very well there. So you might be saying, oh, well, Alfonso Rivas is a first baseman. There's no room for him on the roster. Perhaps, but maybe this is a trade chip. Maybe he improves, plays really well in Iowa next year. Cubs can swing him for somebody who can make an impact on the Major League roster. I like this acquisition. We did have to depart with Tony Kemp, but he was a very minor role player on this roster, let's be honest. The utility man is going to Oakland with 4 more years of team control. The 28-year-old lefty is basically a bench player who can specialize in speed and getting walks. He's a .233 career hitter across 4 seasons. Cubs brought him at the end of last year from the Astros to, steal some bases or whatever. It didn't really do much, so yeah, pretty whatever. I like this trade. And that's essentially it for the Cubs. I guess the one last thing I could say is, with Donaldson's deal settled, that opens the door for a potential Chris Bryant trade. The Nationals need a third baseman, so do the Braves. Other teams are currently asking about Nolan Arenado, who comes through at a much higher financial commitment, but also a more long-term commitment than Bryant. And I would say he's a better third baseman than Bryant just because he's so good at defense too. Not to mention the fact the grievance case is still unsettled. Come on, Major League Baseball. You've done the investigation. You've punished the cheaters. Now is a great time to make a low-key move and say, hey, no, they did not manipulate your service time. And, yeah. I think regardless of how that ruling goes down, if they say, yeah, service time is manipulated, you're going to have how many people filing the same grievances? And if you say no, you make the owners happy, you make front offices happy, but you're going to piss off the players union. So it's a lose-lose situation for Major League Baseball. They've had a lot on their plate this winter, I admit. But please, just make a decision. That about does it for Cubscast, so let's head back to the Stoveminders half of this program, because there were some other moves that went down. Yeah, to be honest, not a lot of great players left at this point of the winter. I understand Ozuna, Puig, and Castellanos are still unsigned, but other than that, it's very thin. And now teams are going through the slim pickings. For instance, the Texas Rangers. They've been in the market for a third baseman. They went after Rendon. They didn't get him. Now they have Todd Frazier on a 1-year deal worth $5 million. The Todd father is well removed from the time when he was a big hitting all-star with the Cincinnati Reds. He was kind of banged up back in 2018, but this past season he had at least a healthy campaign with the Mets, played 133 games, but he had only 42 extra base hits, about half of which were home runs. And 20 home runs is nice, but this is a guy who used to hit 30 plus before the juice ball era. 251 batting average, 772 OPS with a 106 OPS plus. Those are like almost on the money with his 9-year career average. So let's just say we know what we're going to get with Frazier, a 240 to 250 hitter who can kind of slug. He's generally considered a notch above average. It's all right. He will be 34 years old. He can still hit, even though his power has declined. And again, the Rangers were looking for a third baseman. Really, who else is available at this stage? Frazier historically does have a good glove with 33 defensive runs saved in his career at third base, but he had just one last year. Not sure exactly how the Todd father is going to fit into the Rangers' everyday lineup. It's kind of a hodgepodge of guys who can play different positions, and no one's exactly great at any. They got Nick Solak, who's coming off a decent little rookie year, and he can play third base as well. But that's all for the Rangers and manager Chris Woodward to decide. Meanwhile, the Dodgers, they've been on the lookout for some pitching, and they've missed out on basically everybody up to this point. And that's concerning if you're a Dodgers fan, because they've also been losing Ryu and Rich Hill through free agency, so now there's a bit of a growing hole in the back end of their starting rotation. So they went out and got a familiar face. Mr. Alex Wood, coming back on a one-year contract worth $4 million guaranteed, with $6 million in incentives. The left-handed Wood, Dodgers fans might have good memories of Wood, but he did not do very well this past season with the Reds. He struggled with a back injury, was out till July. When he came back, he threw just 35-plus innings with some really bad numbers. But when he was a Dodger from late 2015 to 2018, he threw over 434 innings where he had a 3.46 ERA with a 3.50 FIP and a ground ball rate above 50%. That's pretty nice. For a guy who's going to be like your number 3, number 4 starter, no complaints. So a nice comeback opportunity for a 29-year-old with a good track record of performance, though health is a bit of a concern. That was not the first time he's been hurt. As for the Dodgers, Dave Roberts loves his swingman. He loves to shuffle guys between the rotation and the bullpen. He's probably going to do that with Wood, like he did back when Wood was on the Dodgers just a couple years ago. So it'll be interesting to see how their rotation works out beyond the sort of core two of Kershaw and Buehler. I'm just looking at their roster. Hey, Kenta Maeda probably going to see a lot of work. So will Julio Urias if he stays healthy. And Wood would round out that rotation. But they do have some other young arms like Tony Gonsolin, Dustin May, as well as the newly acquired Jimmy Nelson if he can stay healthy. So lots of options for the Dodgers. Honestly, at this point, Wood was the best starting pitcher available. So not a bad move from them, even if they missed out on Garrett Cole, etc. And now let's mop up a bunch of low-key moves because the stove's cooling down. The Detroit Tigers made a move. Ivan Nova coming over 1 year, $1.5 million. The right-handed Nova is consistent, he's durable, he's experienced, but he's not that good. No. 33-year-old has 10 years under his belt where he's managed a 4.32 ERA with a 4.43 FIP, 1.355 WHIP. Strikeout to walk ratio, not that great. 98 ERA plus in his career, so just kind of below average. Yeah, he's sort of your back of the rotation inning eater, and for a bad team like the Tigers, really, what more do you want? Nova has 4 straight seasons with over 160 innings. He had 187 last year with the White Sox, but he also led the American League in hits allowed with 225, which is 10.8 per 9 on average. So I think the White Sox will be fine with seeing him go to a division rival. If he didn't do well in the AL Comedy Central last year, he probably won't next year. But again, this is the Tigers. There's not much to get excited about regardless. Meanwhile, the San Francisco Giants added another broken arm to their rotation. Talking about left-hander Drew Smyly coming in on a 1-year contract that is guaranteed $4 million with $3 million in incentives depending on how much he pitches. Smyly had Tommy John surgery and missed 2 full seasons of baseball, 2017 and 18. Came back last year with the Rangers, did pretty bad, terrible in fact, ERA and FIP above 8. Got released, signed with the Phillies, and you know what? Smyly did alright with the Phillies. 62 plus innings, 4.45, ERA and 4.79 FIP, above career average, but his six-ish year career average .416 ERA, .423 FIP, about a 9-3 strikeout to walk ratio. He's going to give up a lot of home runs, which is not good news. But again, the Giants, like the Tigers, are not going to be competitive next season. They already got all these guys like Cueto and Samardzija, these older pitchers with not very good injury history. So adding somebody like Smiley, maybe the silver lining is he was actually all right before he got hurt. So see how that turns out. But the Giants adding another starter. And the Atlanta Braves, having seen Josh Donaldson sign with Minnesota, said, hey, we got to add a little bit of depth in the infield. So they nabbed Adeiny Hechavarria on a 1-year contract worth $1 million. Hechavarria is a middle infielder with a pretty good glove. He's been by far mostly a shortstop in his 8-year career, where he owns 20 defensive runs saved. It's great stuff because Hechavarria, not a very good hitter, career .253 batter, career on base below 3, a 642 OPS, and a 76 OPS plus. Yeah, you're not going to see him pinch hitting a lot, but maybe a defensive replacement. I understand their current shortstop, Dansby Swanson, has a good glove as well, but who knows? Who knows what they want to do? Maybe move somebody over to third if Johan Camargo continues to struggle. We'll see what the Braves do, but not a bad idea to have some depth. They had Hechavarria at the back end of last season. He actually hit very well in 70 plate appearances down the stretch, so maybe they're hoping he rekindles some of that magic. And staying in the NL East, where the Philadelphia Phillies took the opportunity of massive league-wide scandal to do something about a controversial player of their own. The Phillies designated outfielder Odubel Herrera for assignment. He cleared waivers, and now he's been outrighted to AAA. So what's the deal with Herrera? Well, he was supposed to be a core player for this Phillies team. He had a very promising first 3 years, where he was an above-average batter, really good base runner, and had a decent glove to boot. Then he had kind of an average 2018, and then a really bad 2019. He appeared in just 39 games, hitting .222 with a 629 OPS, and then he got suspended for the rest of the season for assaulting his girlfriend in Atlantic City. Talking visible signs of injury when she came to the police kind of shit. So, will he ever return? I don't know. I mean, safe to say the social climate is not very forgiving to domestic abusers. Herrera is obviously not the only player who's had this sort of issue. I mean, Domingo Germán of the Yankees recently got a half-season suspension for the same stuff. The Phillies have been unable to trade Herrera up to this point. It's been known that he's been shopped, so that kind of says, hey, other teams don't want to take on the PR shit that comes with Herrera, and the Phillies don't either. And you know what? They don't need him, because if he continues to play like he has the last couple seasons, he's a liability to an underachieving team. They have Kingery, who can play center. They have Segura and Didi Gregorius up the middle, so Kingery doesn't have to play second. So yeah, keep him in AAA. Maybe he'll regain his game and actually contribute something. Herrera is still owed $19.5 million over the next 2 seasons, and the Phillies will have to pay that. But for the moment, he's going to be somewhere, either in the minor leagues or still riding the bench or maybe in jail. Who knows? And that brings us to the topic of conversation that has flooded the baseball world over the past week, the freaking Houston Astros cheating scandal. Jesus Christ. I don't know what I can add to this discussion that hasn't already been said. I guess I'll say this. I'm not as outraged by this as other people. I'm not going to stand here and say, oh, they violated the integrity of the game, because sign stealing is a part of the game. Every team does this. Did they go above and beyond in installing their own camera in center field to zoom in on catcher signs and then blatantly use a freaking trash can to communicate those signs? Yeah, I understand why baseball people are really mad at this. Like, they were obviously cheating. Other teams noticed. Other teams were complaining. Major League Baseball did nothing. And it wasn't until Mike Fears, the most fearful pitcher in baseball, went out and said this publicly and revealed the whole setup. He lifted the veil, and he's kind of faced some backlash for it, with some people like ESPN's analyst, Jessica Mendoza, saying it doesn't sit right with her that a guy like Fears went out and basically threw his old team under the bus. There was some sort of, I don't know, code of silence that should have followed this. But you can see how other players have reacted to this, and I think they are happy with Fears' revelations. We've seen pitchers come out and say, hey, I'd rather face a guy who's on steroids than face a batter who knows what's coming. And from a pitcher's perspective, that makes a lot of sense. And from the perspective of Major League Baseball, here's what I think. I think MLB is okay with sign stealing as long as it's not blatant and it doesn't really, get to other teams. Because as I've said, it's part of the game. But the way in which they sort of hit the integrity was it became public, and now Major League Baseball has to deal with the fallout of this, not just from the public as a whole, but from their own players and other organizations. So the punishment they doled out, taking away their top 2 draft picks in this year and next year, I like that. $5 million fine, really? This is $1 billion franchise. The Houston Astros are worth $1.8 billion as of April of last year. $5 million? That's nothing. Todd Frazier will make that next season, and apparently that's the limit. That's as much as Major League Baseball can fine an organization. So I guess there you have it. And of course, there were the suspensions. So manager AJ Hinch gets a whole year where he can't do any sort of baseball stuff. And you know what? I'm going to say AJ Hinch deserves this. Why? Because Hinch knew this was happening. He didn't like it. He apparently tried to destroy their monitors, which were showing the signs in the clubhouse. And it still happened. So that's a lapse in leadership right there on AJ Hinch. And that sucks to hear because he's a very well-regarded manager. A lot of people like Hinch. So while I think that maybe he can get a job in coaching in some way after, I think teams are going to be a little hesitant to hire him as a manager. Because if a skipper can't stop his team from doing something he doesn't want that he feels is a cheating, how is he going to dole out discipline in other sort of ways? Yes, he has the track record of success, but again, from a leadership perspective, Hinch, man, shot himself in the foot. And then the general manager, Jeff Luhnow, apparently it's Luhnow, he also got suspended for a year. That I thought was kind of out of nowhere just because he didn't really have anything to do with this at all, with the cheating itself. But he didn't stop it either. And I guess it'd be kind of awkward to give somebody a half-season suspension. Luhnow, again, does have a track record of success, but it's clear that under him the organization adopted this win by any means necessary mentality. And say what you want about that. I think there's 2 sides to that coin. How far is too far in wanting to win? But that's a conversation for the philosophers and not for me. What really struck me about this report was no players were named as participating in this whole cheating system. Apart from Carlos Beltran, because he's not a player anymore. He's now a manager, or rather was a manager of the Mets. I'll get to that in a second. So apparently the MLBPA, the Players Association, the union, some part of their agreement with the MLB is they can't punish players for this. Straight up, the league cannot come down on the players for participating in this cheating system, which I think is just absurd. They were the ones benefiting from it. They took part in it. So that doesn't kind of sit well with me, though I understand why that's the outcome. How I think this is going to happen is we're going to have a little bit of vigilante justice. I predict the Houston Astros will lead the major leagues in hit by pitches next season. They're going to get thrown at a lot. For sure. Not to mention their reputations. Not to mention the boos. Or what else may happen. Listen, baseball players take themselves seriously. So I'm honestly interested to see how the players and the fans will react to the Astros team and the players next season. Because if the league's not going to hand out justice, somebody else will. And the fallout has been quite a big crater. The Astros, instead of deciding to keep around Hinch and Lunau on some sort of an interim basis, fired both. Carlos Beltran, I mentioned, was hired by the Mets like a month ago, got fired by them, or mutually parted ways rather, and Alex Cora, the mastermind, the puppet master of the situation, of the system, who took his cheating expertise over to the Boston Red Sox when he became their manager in 2018. His punishment has not been announced yet. But for now, the Red Sox have fired Cora as well. So that's 3 teams, 3 good teams, with no manager, and here we are halfway through January, and how many weeks till pitchers and catchers report? And the Astros, the Red Sox, and the Mets all don't have a manager. So I'm interested to see who gets what job. But for now, yeah, I don't know. Like, will Hinch and Beltran come back to baseball? I feel like they will, just because for the most part they are respected. And I think baseball's a little more forgiving. I mean, Barry Bonds got a job as a hitting coach not long after he retired and after all the steroid revelations. But for Cora, I have a suspicion that he's going to get a lifetime ban for this. Just saying. But that hasn't been announced yet, so I don't know. I'm just hoping we can move past from this. Okay, we know what happened. There's been so much debate and talk, and just they're not going to vacate the title. Like, that's ridiculous. They're not going to do that. That's going to piss off even more people. And the Dodgers can carry around like, oh, well, we won the 27 and 18 World Series because we didn't cheat. They can have that. You can crown yourself with a paper mache crown, but you know what? Fact of the matter is, you're not gonna go back in time and replay that series. So I'm sorry. A lot of things in life aren't deserved. Anyway, it's been Stoveminders Cubscast. We're getting closer to the baseball season finally. Still some things to go down, even though the stove's cooled down. So I'll keep it posted. I'll keep mining that stove. Who knows, maybe a big trade's going to go down. But for now, stay honest.